The first saint canonized in this millennium was a 33-year-old young woman from Poland. Her name was Saint Faustina Kowalska. In April of 2000, she was canonized. And in Poland, where she lived, it's literally about 10-minute drive from Auschwitz. So it's right next to each other. And in 1931, St. Faustina Kowalska received that image that we have hanging on the wall back there, the image of divine mercy. Jesus appeared to St. Faustina and gave her that image. And as you know, the Sunday after Easter, each year we have the Divine Mercy Sunday. So this is pretty cool. That same year that St. Faustina received this image, Jesus gave her an amazing gift. He showed her a vision of heaven. Can you imagine? Showed her heaven. So she later wrote in her journal what she saw in her vision of heaven, and she said, quote, "It was indescribable happiness, the deepest fulfillment of all the longings of every human heart. Nothing that we could possibly imagine does God have planned for us." Sounds a lot like St. Paul, doesn't it? He says, "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, what it is so much as dawned on human beings, what God has prepared for those who love him." Sign me up, man. That sounds great. Sounds a little bit better than driving on the 240 loop, doesn't it? Man, it's awesome. Do you know that every day, 150,000 people die? You're doing the math, that's about one person every 1.6 seconds. What happens when we die? What happens? I mean, this is not a Catholic question, by the way. This is a human question. Every single one of us has to some extent, answer that question if we're going to have peace. You ever wonder that? Like, what happens? So, this Wednesday, everybody will come up here, and we're going to say a few things as we put ashes on your forehead. We're going to quote the book of Genesis that will say, "Remember that you are dust, and unto dust." By the way, when you were baptized years ago, the priest put holy oil right here. When you were confirmed years ago, the bishop put holy oil right here. A few minutes ago, when we read the gospel, we each made the sign of the cross right here. Years from now, possibly on your deathbed, the priest will come to give you last rites and would put holy oil right here. When you come up here this Wednesday, we will put ashes right here, and we will say, don't forget that God has a lot of beautiful things planned for you on the other side. Memento Mori. Those of you that studied Latin back in the day, remember that expression, memento mori? In Latin, the saints have said many years, it means simply don't forget your mortality. Well, Father, look, I'm not really comfortable thinking about that. That freaks me out. But one of the things that the church says, the saints say, is that when we are aware of our mortality, we drink in life to the fullest. Every moment is a gift. We drink it into the fullest. So it's not just about remembering, okay, my life is brief. No. It's about, okay, you know what? Maybe I got 20, 30 years. Who knows? Maybe I got 2 days. I don't know. But for today, we're going to do it. If I need to forgive, I'm going to forgive. I need to love. I need to love. Tomorrow does not exist. You got today. That's what memento mori means. And I love it. This is very, very true. You know, I love this. Because in John's gospel, Jesus says, "In my Father's house there are many, many mansions. If there weren't, I wouldn't tell you. I wouldn't tell you there are. I'm not going to lie to you. He's God. So this is the beauty of Ash Wednesday, and this is the fact that God has planned these things planned for us. One of the toughest group of people that I've ever met as a priest are hospice nurses. I love hospice nurses because these ladies, they tell it like it is. They do not have time. They tell it like it is. And two lessons that I've learned from working with hospice nurses as a priest, I'll share with you. Number one, they will often say that it's not death that people fear. I think most of us are comfortable with that. It's how they may die and what comes after. In other words, the unknown. We see this a lot. Have you ever gone to visit somebody when they're dying? People have no idea what to say. It's awkward for them. They don't want to say the wrong thing, so what do I say? I don't want to say. My suggestion, you don't have to say anything, man. Just be. Just be. But we hate the awkward silence. We feel like we need to say something. No, you don't. Just sit there. It's okay. Just be. That's one of the things that we learn from these hospice nurses. I love them. One of the other things they say, and I love this, they say if you really want to find peace in your life, you have to become comfortable with your mortality in this life. It's not the Catholic Church saying this. Hospice nurses. I totally agree with them. But a lot of Americans are allergic to discussing their mortality. I don't want to talk about it. We have to. But we're never going to be comfortable with it if we don't discuss it. If you permit me, I just want to share with you a brief story of a man who taught me this. So when I was 19, I was the chef at a restaurant in Midtown. And one of my bakers, his name was Sean. And Sean was a Native American. And Sean was 6'5", and I'm 5'5". So we used to say we're Darth Vader and Yoda standing next to each other. So Sean had this long, midnight black hair that he would keep up in a bun, right? And huge hands. So we didn't have a mixer, so Sean would knead all the bread by hand. So we'd have this big bread dough on the counter, and Sean, at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day, before service, we would turn off the radio, dishwasher would stop, everything stops in the kitchen. We all turn to Sean, and he would lean over and put his hands on the bread dough, and he would spend 1 minute praying for everybody that ate that bread. And there's a few times I'm like, all right, chop, chop. Sean, we gotta go, man. All right? So one night after dinner service, Sean and I were drinking a beer in the back of the restaurant. And I said, man, I hope I'm not prying and asking this question, but what are you praying for? And he said, Ben, he said, in the Native American community, we're very, very open talking about death because we don't believe that it stops with that. So he said, I'm praying that everybody that eats our bread has a beautiful death. Beautiful. Somehow ironic that as a priest, I learned more about death and dying from a non-Catholic Native American than I did from years of Catholic theology. It's a great lesson for me. John Paul II, you may have heard me say before, for his part, he used to say, death is not the end, it's only the beginning. Or as we heard in the second reading, does anybody remember this? That was 5 minutes ago, sorry. All right. It says, "O death, where's your sting? Where's your sting? You've lost." St. Francis, he called death, "Sister Death, come, let us walk. You have no power over me." By the way, Pope Francis said the same thing this week as he approaches the end of his life, most likely. It can either be an ogre that's always standing over us, or we turn around and say, Let's do it. Because I know what's on the other side, my friend. Here's a question. Maybe you can help me with this. Maybe those of you in the medical community, you can help me with this. What's the difference between our brain and our mind? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Our brain and our mind. In brief, according to what Catholics believe, our brain is mortal, our mind is immortal. What does the word immortal mean? Can't die. The brain is an organ, the most important organ. We judge death by brain death, but the organ of the brain will one day die. The mind, however, our memory, intellect, will, creativity, is eternal, according to what St. Thomas Aquinas in the Catholic Church says. That's why when people die and they go to heaven, I remember these people. I recognize these people. Are they intertwined? Totally. That's why when people that have dementia, they can't remember things, because the brain is having some challenges. But the mind is internal. That's so important. You know what that means, folks? It means that you and I are eternal. We've been given a huge gift called immortality. That's Easter. So I'll close with this. Anybody here ever read the book The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis? If you've never read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, go home and read it. Trust me, you can read it in an afternoon. So C.S. Lewis, Clive Staples Lewis, he wrote this in the year 1950. And love that book. I was given a copy of it by my parents when I was a kid. So in the book, these four siblings, the youngest of whom is Lucy, they're playing hide and go seek. And Lucy hides in this wardrobe. And on the inside the wardrobe, it opens up to this whole world called Narnia. And in Narnia, she meets Aslan, this lion, Mr. Tumnus, all these awesome creatures. And towards the end of his life, C.S. Lewis said the wardrobe was a metaphor for death. That as we go into this wardrobe, there's a whole universe that we have never seen in this life, but it exists. Question, in a few minutes we're all going to stand and we're going to read the creed. What is the first line of the creed that we're about to say? We believe in all things visible and that's what we're saying. That on the other side of the wardrobe of death, this passageway, it's a whole invisible world waiting for us. It's a whole iceberg underneath the water that we've never seen. So do you know, by the way, C.S. Lewis died the exact same day and the same hour as JFK. He died the same day and the same hour as President Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. I like to believe that as C.S. Lewis, devout Christian, went through the own wardrobe of his own death, there was his wife, Joy, who died 2 years earlier, waiting for him. And 10 years after C.S. Lewis in 1973, when his good friend J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings, died, there was C.S. Lewis waiting for him saying, "Welcome, brother. Welcome." Jesus says, "I'm the gate." In the Gospel of John, he said, "I'm the gate. I'm the wardrobe. You will come in through this gate and you will go out the other side and you will find pasture and peace for yourself." That's what Memento Mori means. And that's what we remember Wednesday.